impromptu live stream. This is a replay of last couple days. I did one a couple days ago where I didn't finish it off. So essentially, what we're going to look at here is a list of the 49 supposed worst horror movies ever rated on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm going to go through the ones and the ones that I've seen, see if I agree or disagree. And I want you to join in too. So, for anyone who joins the stream while we're live, but you get this intro at the start, just skip straight to the live bit, forget all the shit that comes after it, because the chat is going to be probably more fun than the list itself. So, why are we wasting time? Let's just start straight to the list. So, to let you know, this list comes direct from Rotten Tomatoes. So, take the scores with a grain of salt. They are critic scores, not necessarily user scores. And it also is a top 50 list where someone forgot to put number 50 in there. So we have 49 to get through. I think this will take maybe under an hour. So let's get cracking. Coming in at 49 is Brahms, The Boy 2. Now, I haven't seen the first Brahms that I am aware of, but I have seen the ripoff movie. What's the ripoff called? Is it 11-11-11? Is that the ripoff version of it? I've seen that one. That was pretty crap. And I'm pretty sure 11-11-11 is on this list too. But the Brahms, The Boy 2, haven't seen, no opinion of it. If you've got an opinion of it, like I said, leave it in the chat. Let's move on. 48. This is my first disagreement with this list already. Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, is easily one of the most fun Friday the 13th movies ever. For anyone to say that this movie is bad, 11 out of 100, you need to get your head read. Okay, I can admit it's got some moments where it's not the greatest film. I can admit that. But it's still so much fun. I mean, it's Friday the 13th. It's Jason in his hockey mask. Jason, played by Kane Hodder, heading into New York with a whole bunch of idiots. What's not to like about this film? Well, apparently a lot, because an 11% critics rating score means that they didn't like it. But then again, when has a critic ever liked a horror movie? Probably never. 47 is The Order, starring Heath Ledger. Now, 2003, I haven't seen. You know what? I'm actually thinking that I have seen this movie, probably back in 2004, and unremarkable that I don't remember it. So I have nothing to say about this film other than it probably deserves its 10% Rotten Tomatoes score. 46 is the American remake of the Thai film Shutter. The Thai film is really good. I really liked the original Thai film, but this one, Joshua Jackson, if I remember correctly, was a pretty hot commodity, a couple years before that with those, what's that soapy, Dawson's Place, right? So I'm assuming that he was cast because they probably thought they might get some bums on seats throwing Josh Jackson in this title. What spins me out about this American remake is the fact that there's so many Japanese people involved. A Japanese actress and a Japanese director for a Thai movie. I think that's where you went wrong. An 11% Rocket Tomatoes. 11% An 11% Rotten Tomatoes score would agree with that. 45 is Martyrs. Now, I was always under the impression that Martyrs was a good film. I've never seen it. Then I read this and realized this is the sequel. This is a sequel to the film and is not the film that I have in my head about Martyrs. So I haven't seen either of the films, but looking at this 9% Rotten Tomatoes score from critics, it's not making me think that I want to see it. Have you seen it though? Did you think it was a 9% Rotten Tomatoes score type of movie? Coming in at 44, Species 2. Now, I will admit that as a teenage boy back in 95, 96, when the first Species film came out, I mean, that was That was pretty cool. Mm. Natasha Henstridge walking around virtually naked. Well, not all the time, but every second time she's on screen, walking around naked. Doesn't speak a word in the film because she's an alien. Then you got, ultra cool Michael Madsen and Helen, what's her name? Marg Helgenberger, who was later in CSI. In fact, they are in the sequel. But I'm struggling to remember the sequel. If this was the first movie, if I saw Species Part 1 on this list at number 44 with a 9% Rotten Tomato score, I would say, critics, you've got no idea. It's the first Species, I think, was a fun film. It's not a good film, but it's a fun film. 43 is See No Evil, the first movie that came out from WWE Studios, the first actual WWE Studios film. We all know that there were WWE actors in movies before this, like The Rock and Welcome to the Jungle, what was that? The Rundown. I don't know why it got a different title here in Australia. But this is See No Evil. Now, Kane, the brother of The Undertaker, is the lead in this film, and he's got a really dumb name. His character has a really dumb name in the film. And I think for a first up film for WWE, horror was probably a really good start, because when you look at what a lot of Japanese studios do, they just pump out horror films. And that's a great way to get your talent across to a good audience, a teenage audience who likes horror films. It looks like a bit of a misstep, this one. Now, I vaguely remember See No Evil, but my memory is telling me it's better than a 10%. But then again, critic score. My guess, Roger Ebert probably gave it a big fat 0. 42 is Prom Night, the remake of the movie from the 80s. You're going to laugh, but I vaguely remember Prom Night. If I've even seen it, I vaguely remember it. And I know I definitely haven't seen this sequel, even though somewhere over there is a copy of the movie on Blu-ray that I probably bought for $1 or something like that. So I should watch it. Because it's got a 9% score, that's why I want to watch it, because usually when movies get low ratings like this, that means I'll probably like it. So I'm going to give it a shot. And Brittany Snow's in it. Brittany Snow's cute. 41 is a film called Captivity. I don't remember this film. It says here that it is the part of the torture porn horror genre, which is made very famous by Hostel, with Alicia Cuthbert. Alicia Cuthbert, 24. But I don't remember this film. I don't think it's that good. Trust me, I know I'm saying right now I don't remember a lot of these films. Later on, I do. Some of the other movies in this, I do know a lot of the movies on this list. And this is one that I do know. Urban Legends, Final Cut. The first one, I remember the first one being really fantastic, but I vaguely remember this sequel. And my memory is telling me that the reason you don't remember the sequel, Dan, is because it was rubbish. And I don't know if it's 10% rubbish, but I'm going to go and disagree and say it's probably bad, but not really bad, as it says there. 39, When a Stranger Calls. Why does this vaguely feel familiar to me? So I think, if I'm remembering right, I've seen this one, and I think it was just blur. And the reason I think it's just blur is because I'm pretty sure this came out at the time when America was doing those PG-13, is that what you call them? Horror films, where you want to make a horror movie and you want to get the teenagers in the audience, but you don't want to risk making a good horror film that no one goes to, that no one can see. So you make this really kind of watered down horror movie, and then when you release it on DVD and video, you make like a director's cut where you say 4 more F words in it. I think, if I remember correctly, this was one of those films, and I'm pretty sure that's why I agree that the 9% Rotten Tomato score on this one is probably damn accurate. Now, Darkness Falls. This was one of the first movies I ever bought on bootlegged DVD, and I remember actually enjoying this one. I I think this was a good film. Well, okay, not a good film, but I think it was enjoyable enough that I don't think a 10% Rotten Tomato score is valid. Have you seen it? I think Lyle, when he was last in the chat with me, said that he had seen this one. But I can't remember what you said, Lyle, whether you enjoyed it or not. I don't see what's to not enjoy about it. 37, Slender Man. I don't know the craze about Slender Man. I know that there's a lot of internet stories about it. I know that they're supposed to be scary. Have you seen Slender Man? Tell me if you've seen it. Tell me if it's supposed to be scary. I like the concept and I like the idea of it. I think it's just when you get this preteen horror titles, kind of like Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I actually enjoyed Five Nights at Freddy's. I thought it was quite clever. It was quite fun, but it wasn't scary at all. And I think Slender Man falls into the same category as Five Nights at Freddy's, where it's kind of preteen horror. It probably petrifies 11 and 12-year-olds, but the rest of us will go, okay, so when does the movie start? But I think 8% is a bit of a tough score. It's probably one that you'd have to watch. So I would be prepared to watch that to see what that's like. 36 is Lost Souls, Winona Ryder from 2000. Safely can say I have not seen this one. And at 8% Rotten Tomato scores means I will never watch it. Now, I remember having a chat with Lyle about this one. Coming in at 35 is Blumhouse's Fantasy Island, which is apparently based on some kind of TV series. And I looked at this and thought, oh, Maggie Q's in it. I should watch it if Maggie Q is in it. I remember not wanting to... Sorry, let me start again. I remember seeing the ads for this movie. I remember seeing the promotional stuff for this movie. And I don't remember paying too much attention to the... You don't know much about the creepypasta like Slender Man. Yeah, okay. So Slender Man is a creepypasta. Right. So a creepypasta, is that like when there's this weird story on the internet that people just keep retelling other people and it means it's true? Is that what the creepypasta is? I think it's weird. Where does creepypasta come from? Anyway, back to Fantasy Island. I keep thinking it was about the old TV show with, the plane, Fantasy Island. And it wasn't. And I never paid enough attention to the poster to realize that there was some kind of skull in the poster. Should have been a giveaway. Also should have been a giveaway that it was from Blumhouse. So they're the two things that made me, like, I didn't watch it. So I haven't seen Fantasy Island. But I would be curious to know if it's worth it, because at 8% Rotten Tomatoes, that's telling me it's not worth it at all. So, Lyle, you are agreeing with me. It is based on a 70s TV series. You're saying that there's an unrated version. So this whole American concept of unrated versions is very strange to me. Just release the movie with a rating. Rings. That is 34. Rings. So this is an exclusive American-only movie that doesn't follow any of the other Japanese Sadako Ring movies. And I've never heard good things about this, and I've never bothered to watch it. And I think because it's a completely unnecessary sequel. Although Vincent D'Onofrio's in it. I just saw that now. The big Vinny D is in it, and Vinny D's awesome. I love Vinny D in Men in Black. Who doesn't like Men in Black when D'Onofrio pulls the back of his neck and he goes, "Sugar in water"? Like, that's makes me laugh every time I think of it. Lars just said that they tried to do to Fantasy Island what they did with the Banana Splits. I haven't seen the Banana Splits horror movie, but I heard that was half decent. Is that correct? The Banana Splits horror film? Anyway, back to Rings. 2017, it's around the same time in Japan, they also released Sadako 3D, which I've seen Sadako 3D, and it is not a great film. The Sadako films have kind of gone off a cliff until DX, that was released last year. It was actually half decent because it's a comedy horror. But Rings, I would stay away from, and I'm not even going to bother watching about it. And I can see the word dark subculture. I already know it's just going to be an annoying film. where they try to understand the backstory of Sadako, or Samira, is what they call her in the American version. 33 is The Reaping, Hilary Swank, and David Morrissey, and Idris Ibla, and not a film for me. So I'm going to skip over that. 3%. Here we go. Lyle says, Seen the Rings has a cool idea about showing the cursed video on a passenger plane. Yeah, that could cause chaos on a passenger plane. The thing is, though, with showing that on the plane is that everyone still gets the 7 days rule. So in Japan, they changed the 7-day rule to a 48-hour rule for the latest Rings, because that's to do with the whole short attention span of teenagers. And then in Sadako DX, they've changed Sadako's time limit to kill you to 24 hours. What's next? I mean, if you watch the Chinese rip-off movies that have nothing to do with it, she kills you straight away, which is probably more fun. The Banana Splits movie was so-so. Sounds like it was better than Fantasy Island, though, Lyle. Would you agree on that one? I'm going to skip past The Reaping because I haven't seen it. Now, Premonition, 32. Sandra Bullock, 7% Rotten Tomatoes. I think this is a pretty tight score. I remember seeing this, and I think it wasn't too bad. I think 8% is a little bit low for Premonition. 31, An American Werewolf in Paris. I don't like werewolf movies. It's like I don't like vampire movies. I have seen some vampire movies, and I can admit there are a couple of good vampire movies. Abigail was good. Nosferatu, obviously, is good. But I can't do werewolf movies except for Dog Soldiers. Dog Soldiers was a werewolf movie, right? Dog Soldiers, because I'm sure that had Kane Hodder in it. Lyle, you're my fact checker. And you know your stuff, Lyle. Dog Soldiers has Kane Hodder in it. Am I correct? I'll give you a minute because I know that the live chat and the delay is probably a couple of seconds. But 100% sure, 99% sure, Kane Hodder is in Dog Soldiers, and it is the only werewolf movie that I will ever watch. I cannot do werewolf movies. 31 sucks. It's just plain terrible. 31, Lyle, you're referring to An American Werewolf in Paris. That sounds good enough to me. If it sucks, let's move on. If you're new to the stream, welcome. Please join in the chat with Lyle and I. We need your input as well for some of these movies, because you might disagree with what we think of this film. It's an all British cast, so it's not even an American werewolf. Is that what you're saying? 30 is The Forsaken, from 2001. This is my vintage. I should have seen this. Probably have seen it. Guarantee you don't remember anything about it. Skipping over it. 29. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. So the first time I flicked through this list, I saw this movie there, and I'm thinking, I'm sort of ready to throw down. Who the fuck puts I Still Know What You Did Last Summer on a list? Then I saw the word still there. Still. And I realized, okay, they're talking about the sequel. The first one I think is fun, with the fisherman and, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt. The first one, it came out at a great time for teen horror, just after Scream. 90s teen horror, I think, is a lot of fun. This is probably the unnecessary sequel, the sequel we didn't need to have. And I don't think it's a 7% score, although Brandy definitely brings it down to a very low score. It's not a 7% score. I think that is a really unwarranted score. Now, Lyle, I remember you told me something last time about Danny Cannon. And by the time you hear this, I'm going to have moved on to the next one. So I apologize in advance. But I remember you did say that Danny Cannon has gone on to do something very good. Is that correct? Did you say he went on to do CSI? Am I remembering correctly? We'll get back to that. This is another one that freaked me out when I first saw this, because 2011, there's also a Hong Kong horror film called Dream Home, which is fantastic, starring Josie Ko, who's Sammo Hung's daughter, and also starring Derek. What's his name? Directed Better Days. It's a great film. If you ever see a Hong Kong horror movie called Dream Home from 2011, watch it. Not this crap. Not this 2011 Daniel Craig Naomi Watts film, which, if I remember correctly, was not great at all. The Hong Kong one is about this woman who definitely, CSI, thanks, La. It's about this woman who wants this apartment and she can't afford it. So she starts killing people in the building to bring the price of the apartment down and to pick it up for a good price. So avoid that one. Watch the Hong Kong version, Dream Home. Much better film. 27's White Noise with Michael Keaton. Again, I've seen this one, and I think 7% is nut score. 7% is a stupid score for this. Come on. It's certainly worth a bit higher than 7%. 26, The Devil Inside. Haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. If you've seen it, leave a comment there and I'll get back to it. Just reference number 26 if that's the one you're talking, if that's what you want to say. But I haven't seen Devil Inside, so I got no comment about it. Now, 25 is Return of the Living Dead Part 2. I've seen Return of the Living Dead. I've seen Return of the Living Dead Part 3. I haven't seen Return of the Living Dead Part 2. So Part 1's funny. Part 3, Melinda Clark, is Melinda Clark, right? But this one, I haven't seen, so I can't say if I agree. But a 5% score just seems mean. It seems nasty. It seems like it's obviously people who don't love horror have scored this score, because I think that's a nut score. It cannot be a 5%. All right, we're charting new territory now, Lyle. Number 24 is Troll 2 from 1990. A 5% score. Haven't seen it. Skip it on. So Lyle raises a good point there. We go back to 26 just for a second. He said that this was a film that at the end referred you to a real life website, which is probably more than long gone now. So by watching the film now and trying to go to that website, the whole what's the word I'm looking for? Novelty is probably worn off. Troll 2, haven't seen. Lyle, you saying that Return of the Living Dead Part 2 is crap? Wow. So I should avoid it, because I think we can all agree the first one's fun, right? Whew, did not expect to hear that is correct. That score for 25 is correct. Moving on to 23 is another film with darkness in the title. This one came before Darkness Falls, with Anna Paquin in it. Haven't seen it. It says it's an illogical, portentous. Is that a word? Portentous mess? I'll take your word on that. Not interested in it. 22, Ouija. Now, when it comes to movies about Ouijas, Lyle says that Troll 2 is bad. There is a documentary about it called Best Worst Film. I think once we get to the end of this list, Lyle, you'll see that Troll 2 is not the best of the worst film, because there's quite a lot of so-called worst films on this list that I think are much better than Troll 2. Ouija, 2014, haven't seen this one. But I've seen plenty of movies about Ouijas, and they all feel the same. So what original new thing could this movie possibly bring to the Ouija table? Jacob's Ladder. I'm guessing this is some kind of remake. 21, a 4% score. David M. Rosenthal. Sorry, no, I'm getting him confused with the person who directed Halloween, right? Oh, I'm not going to unblock ads for you, Rotten Tomatoes. Go away. No one unblocks ads for Rotten Tomatoes. Haven't seen that, and I'm not interested in looking at Jacob's Ladder. No. So maybe the 4% score is good. Oh, and here's another one I haven't seen. Gary Oldman, which is From 2019, which is probably the period of time where I stopped watching American horror movies because I think they were starting to go into really crappy territory. And this just proves my point. At a 4% score, why bother watching it? Another one I haven't seen, Julianne Moore, Six Souls. Oh, this doesn't look good at all. It says it's goofy. Goofy's I love the word goofy to describe something is fantastic. Skipping this. Lyle, when you say you heard it was bad, but the sequels are set to be good, I'm assuming you're referring to Ouija because that's had a ton of sequels, if I'm correct. And I'm not usually correct that often. It's another film I haven't seen. Number 18, Soul Survivors. It's got Eliza Dushku in it. Dushku. I always say her name wrong. So 2001. So yeah, okay. So it's about the time of the Buffy era. Soul Survivors, which means I probably have seen this if it's from 2001. And my memory says, Dan, you don't remember. Sounds good enough for me. The Fog. The Fog. The remake of The Fog. Yeah, I agree with this one. I agree. Okay, so 4% I don't agree with, but I agree that it is a bad film. Yeah. Excuse me, I think 4% is a little bit on the too rotten side, but it is a bad film. That I will admit. Why did it qualify as needing a remake? This one I also do agree with. So the original Flatliners, I think is great. And I think everyone who's seen the original Flatliners thinks it's great, right? So the concept of the medical students trying to deliberately die so that they know what the afterlife is like, and then they bring themselves back to life. I'm pretty sure the original had Kiefer Sutherland in it, right? The Fog remake is bad. 100% agree with you, Lyle. We agree on that. But on Flatliners, how do you take a brilliant film like the 80s original and then turn it into this? You've taken all the good stuff out of the original film, and then what you're left with is a 2017 sensibilities or American style filmmaking that ends up with an unwatchable mess. 4%, maybe I would agree with it. I remember it just being a terrible waste of a film. So Flatliners can F off. Godsend. Greg Kinnear, Robert De Niro. So exactly, you're right, Lyle. The original was good. R.I.P. Donald Sutherland, and he's referring to Flatliners. 100% agree with you. The original was good, but it did not need a remake. And this film is just. I remember this being utter horse shit. Godsend. I agree with this one. I think this one comes down to the casting. Greg Kinnear is a rom-com kind of guy. Rebecca Romaine is just not someone that I would take seriously as the mother of someone. And then Bobby De Niro. Now, say what you want about Bobby De Niro now. He might be a bit of a Fruit Loop nutcase now, but Bobby De Niro was fantastic. I remember the first time watching Heat and seeing him and Pacino together. That was outstanding. And so many other De Niro movies you just love, right? This is a black mark on his filmography. And while I think 4% might be a little too mean of a score for this, Godsend was crap. Yeah. That one I think we're going to agree with. Just maybe not that score. This is the third movie on this list with the word darkness in the title. I think we're getting a theme here. Do not put the word darkness in your movies because they're going to end up shit. Lyle's just referring back to Godsend with the flaming table at it being ridiculous. Your memory is far better than mine. I don't remember the flaming table. I just remember it being crap. But the darkness. So how do you take Kevin Bacon from the original Friday the 13th movie? Kevin Bacon, who's Kevin Bacon. How do you take Radha Mitchell, who I think was outstanding in the first Silent Hill movie? I hope the Silent Hill movie is not on this list. How do you make a movie with them and fuck it up? %3 is probably justified for Godsend, for Darkness. I got issues with this. I did some pre-research before. This is a bullshit entry. Coming in at 13, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. There's a 3% score. That's a 3% critic score, and critics are fucking wankers. So 3% is nuts. The user score for this is at 50%, and I agree with the user score on this one. Way too many people, way too many people took this concept far too seriously, and all they wanted to do was talk about how crap this was going to be and how crap it was. Most people who say this movie's crap have not seen it. Because anyone who's seen Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey will go, that was really silly. That was a funny concept. Yeah, it had issues, but you know what? I had fun watching it. The accents were crap. I remember the lead woman in it had a horrible accent. And look, the concept is a little bit silly. And when you get into part two is great. I really like part 2. And it's fucking gory. 32 kills in it. That's a massive death count. It's kind of like this movie is not needed because they've essentially ignored some of the lore in part 2 that originated in this film. So they talk about the massacre that happens in part 2, but pretty much that's about it. It seems to be that they've just kind of tried to reboot the movie. Ignore this score. If you're on the fence about wanting to see, sorry, Lyle, I've just seen your comment. Hey, at least 14 will win someone 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You're damn right. You're damn right. But if someone comes to you and says, yes, you're right. It's used as a fake movie in part 2 as well. When she's babysitting the kid and he's watching it on television. If someone asks you, should I see Winnie the Pooh, the movie? You say, fuck yes. Watch it. Watch it going in knowing that it is a silly film and that you know that there are people out there who bag the crap out of it. But those people are boring people. And same with the new Cinderella Curse film. Okay, it's from that British company that makes really terrible films, right? And it has its problems, Cinderella Curse, like the light switches. But it's still fun, and it's a great little slasher film, and a glass slipper being used as a weapon's great. Watch Winnie the Pooh. 3% is bullshit. Ignore this score. I can see Uwe Boll's name for number 12, and that looks like the House of the Dead. It is too. The House of the Dead. Okay. Where do we start with number 12's The House of the Dead? So based on the popular Sega, not Sega, Sega, based on the popular Sega arcade game, which is great fun. But when you first played The House of the Dead, you probably never thought there's a movie in this, right? You know, Dr. Kurian in his castle, whatever. You got Agent G, a couple of other agents that are with him. You've got all these, you know, the monsters. Oh, well, I can't remember the names of the monsters. But knowing that there was going to be a movie of it, you just know, okay, well, it's not going to have the monsters of the game. It's not going to follow the total plot of the games. And it didn't. You know, it was the rave on the island where the zombie outbreak happens. Famous for its tits, this film. You have to admit, there was no tits in the arcade version, but the movie had tits. And also, if I remember correctly, in the rave scene in the movie, I'm pretty sure there's a poster or a banner that says Sega on it. But the score. So yes, the critics were going to give it 3% because of the director, Uwe Boll. I don't think any Uwe Boll movie, Uwe Boll film has ever gotten a great score. And you can rattle off, you know, Alone in the Dark. Assault on Wall Street wasn't too bad. It had Edward Furlong in it. Probably one of his better non-video game IP movies. But this film, now we all know there's a sequel. No, maybe you don't all know this. There is a sequel to this film as well, which I don't think was done by Boll. Uwe Boll has devastated the video game movie genre. I think that's a bit tight. Have you seen what Paul Anderson's done with Resident Evil? I mean, okay, Resident Evils were fine. What about the second Mortal Kombat film? That was absolutely terrible as a video game adaptation. And you know what? A lot of people don't realize this, but over in Japan, there are heaps and heaps of horror movies based on Japanese horror video games over there. Fatal Frame, Siren, Corpse Party. So there are heaps and heaps of movies. There's even a movie based on Yakuza, Like a Dragon, from Takeshi Kitano. Anyway, we're getting way off point here. House of the Dead is a bad film, but it is not a 3% Rotten Tomatoes bad film. I'll have a debate with anyone on that one, but I'll probably have to watch the movie again beforehand. And number 11 is The Apparition. I couldn't tell you much off the top of my head about this film, but I know I've seen it. I know I've seen it because, and the reason I know I've seen it is because I know it's from 2012. So it's around the time where I was watching every horror movie ever made at that time. And I know I would have seen this one. The fact that I don't remember it that well means that it's not a good film. But again, with the scores, it's not a 3% score. Surely not. Now we're getting into the top 10. I remember this film. I've got a bit of a story for fear.com. Who remembers Kazaa? Yeah, you remember Kazaa? For those who don't know, Kazaa was a peer-to-peer file sharing app for computers back then. And most people on Kazaa were sharing music, but you could also share movie files, right? So I remember downloading this on dial-up internet, by the way. I remember downloading fear.com through Kazaa. And then I remember buying a very dodgy looking Chinese bootleg off a Russian website. So make sense at the same time of this film. So fear.com probably coming in. I'm trying to think of when Pulse came out in Japan. And I think it was after this one. Starting to play on the fear of using the internet as a horror kind of trope. And now we see that now with maybe stuff like Slender Man, which is based on more of an internet story being turned into a film. This was more about the concept of the internet being evil. I think Hollywood was just trying to forewarn you that internets were going to be good for piracy of movies, to be honest. Anyway, going to fear.com. How could any movie with Stephen Dorff be bad, right? Right? Stephen Dorff can't make bad films, can he? Well, he can, apparently. Wasn't Stephen Dorff in Alone in the Dark? I'm pretty sure he was. This is a bad film. I agree, this is a bad film, but it's not a 3% bad film. Not a 3% bad film. And it's a pretty weak start to a top 10 list here. Rotten Tomatoes. So, see, Lyle says he remembers not hating fear.com. I also remember not hating it, but I also remember not liking it either. Right. So I know that kind of contradicts itself, but you can not like something but not hate it. Number 9 is Bless the Child, Kim Basinger. So at first I looked at this and thought, no, I haven't seen this film. But now when I see the fact that Kim Basinger was in it, I am pretty sure I've seen this one and don't remember it. Because I look at the year it came out, 2000. So I think I get this one confused with Godsend with Robert De Niro. I'm pretty sure I do. But I know Godsend was shithouse. This one I vaguely remember. I know it's just about kids, newborns and children and, them being evil things. 4% is probably right. I'm just going to say, yeah, I agree with you, Rotten Tomatoes. I've never heard of this. The Haunting of Molly Hartley. It says it's a rather lifeless horror endeavor with a pedestrian plot and a few scares. That could be a lot of other horror movies. I haven't seen this. I've never heard of it, so I'm skipping over it. But at a 2% Rotten Tomatoes score, it's obviously not bad. I see Uwe Boll's name again. It's got Alone in the Dark was Christian Slater, not Stephen Dorff. I apologize to Stephen Dorff for that. Christian Slater and At the time, Tara Reid, she still looked normal at the time until she went all fucking nuts. And then what made her what was that shark movie that she was in recently? Not an old one, but a newish one. There's a newish shark movie that's on Tubi. Is it Shark Bait? Where she plays this kind of she plays like a merchant, like when you play a game and there's like this weird merchant in the middle of an apocalyptic setting. She's like a merchant in the middle of the swamp lake that's just been flooded by that power company. I'm pretty sure that's Shark Bait, and I'm pretty sure Tara Reid's in it, and she's fucking hilarious in that. Hold on, I can't read. What does it say next to Tara Reid's name? It says Stephen Dorff. I knew I had a gut feeling that he was in it. So I take that apology back, Stephen Dorff, that you weren't in Alone in the Dark. You were. I just had to continue reading that line. I knew my gut feeling was right, that he was in this film. Alone in the Dark. What can we say about Alone in the Dark? Hold on. I think Lyle's got the answer for my shark movie question. It's popping up. New shark movie that narrows it down. You're absolutely right, because she's in all these fucking shark movies now. She's just made a name for herself in those that kind of Z grade trashy genre. But Alone in the Dark, I have played. I want to say the PlayStation 3 version of the game, but I'm looking over at my collection and I don't see it there, so I don't think I have even played that one. Alone in the Dark is not the type of horror game that I enjoyed. I remember the first ones that kind of clicky adventure game on the PC that's very bright and doesn't look like it would be a horror film to me. So I don't I know I'm not an Alone in the Dark game fan. But again, everyone hates on Uwe Boll, so straight away they hate on it and say it's a shit film. I don't remember this being a overly terrible film, but I do remember it not being a great film. Number 6. See the word that's in the title? Darkness. Don't put darkness in the title of your film, because then you'll get on this list. And number 6, Beneath the Dark List, gets a 0 Rotten Tomato score. That means every critic who watched it would not give it a score and said it was shit. Dennis Quaid's in it. That's embarrassing. But I have to say, I haven't seen this, and I'm going to skip over this one. We're in the top 5. Mischa Barton's Homecoming from 2009. It's not ringing a bell. This one's not ringing a bell at all. I don't think I've seen this one. And it's good. It's a 0% Rotten Tomato score. So the top 5's not off to a good start, because I haven't seen number 5. Oh, I haven't seen number 4 either. What is this film? The Disappointments Room. Kate Beckinsale. Dana and a 5-year-old son start a new life by moving from the hustle. Can you put the whole synopsis there? Give me the whole synopsis. Don't open up a new window. I knew you'd do that. Okay. I've never seen this film. I've never even heard of it. That's a disappointment. We've got 3 movies left. And God, I know I've seen the first movie on the list, but now I'm hoping I've seen the other 2. And oh my God, I almost had a heart attack when I saw this, because Cabin Fever is not a bad film. But this is the remake from 2016. Do you remember hearing about Cabin Fever's getting a remake? And you're like, but why? It's a good film already. That a movie about a bunch of people going to a cabin where a flesh-eating bacteria starts eating at their bodies. That the first Cabin Fever, and even some of the sequels. Well, no, the first one is great. Some of the sequels are fun. But the idea that you would make a remake of a movie that only came out The first Cabin Fever was very early 2000s. So why it needed a remake within 15 years of release is very baffling. Very baffling. And it was crap. It absolutely was crap. It was crap in the sense that it was unneeded. So it didn't need to occur. And crap that all the fun and all the kind of excitement that came from the first movie is lost because you're watching a remake. It's exactly like Flatliners and exactly like The Fog. Why would you watch the Costco Aldi version of the movie when you can go and get the proper one? Now, Lyle has just said the most controversial thing I've ever heard anyone say. I wasn't a fan of the original Cabin Fever. Really, Lyle? Really? You weren't a fan of Cabin Fever? Oh, man. I can't be alone in this, right? I'm not the only one who thought the original Cabin Fever was good. Oh, Lyle. Why you do this to me? Let's go see what movie number 2 is. Wow. What's this? Jaws 4, I think. The Revenge. I'd say this is accurate. Unnecessary film. Totally relying on the name of Jaws. And the name Jaws gets just thrown around far too much for shark movies. But I think this is hard to disagree with it. What I am noticing, though, with this list is that the movie number 3 has a 0% Rotten Tomato score. The movie number 2 has a 2% Rotten Tomato score. So clearly this list was not built on the fact that we're ranking it in a particular, Cabin Fever, Rotten Tomato score. It seems to be just whatever the author of this particular article wanted to rank them. And by that theory, I think that this person just wanted to shit all over Jaws the Revenge, which kind of makes sense. But let's be honest here, it probably should have been a little bit further down the list if we're talking about actually ranking these movies. Lyle agrees. I agree. Jaws Revenge deserves its spot here. But number one on this list is actually spoiled because it's in the thumbnail. Is One Missed Call. And this is Shannon Sossamon's second movie in this list. The other one, I believe, if I remember correctly, was another remake called Shudder. I believe she was in that. So, Shannon, you're certainly bad at picking movies. The original Japanese movie of One Missed Call was fun. I had the ringtone as my phone ringtone, and the worst part was no one got it. No one when the phone rang, no one knew. Oh, that's from that horror movie because this version changed the ringtone. All right. Now, this one came out at the tail end of America having to remake Japanese horror movies. So you remade The Ring, and you did a good job remaking The Ring. Why? Because you put Naomi Watts in the lead. When you put an Aussie in there, or New Zealander, that we call an Aussie, I'll give you that one, right? But when you remake One Missed Call, which by Japanese standards was okay, wasn't a great film, it was just okay. And the worst part is there's 3 Japanese movies, and parts 2 and 3 make up this fucking lore about this movie, and they go to Taiwan and do all this other shit to get to the origin of the phone call. This series just went completely off the rails in Japan. So knowing that, why on hell you would go to Americans would go and remake that film? Completely mystifying. Lyle's upset that Ray Wise is in it. So why? Lyle, you're going to have to ask him because he'll be the only one who can tell you why he decided to star in this film. My guess is that he thought, I need some money. J-horror remakes for the US audience are a good thing right now. The Ring was good. At that stage, The Ring 2 had come out. You had Ju-on The Grudge. doing well as well. Shutter was also done, but we can see Shutter didn't do too great. And The Eye was also remade. So, but that was a Hong Kong horror film. But he decided to do One Missed Call. The only good thing about One Missed Call is this poster where the eyes of the person are replaced with mouths screaming. And it's quite a disturbing looking poster. I'll give it that. But the American remake is bad. The Japanese original is barely watchable as it is. Just that ringtone was cool. So but I don't agree that this is probably the worst low-rated horror movie of all time. I think that's a bit unfair. The original One Missed was a spoof of J-horror. It certainly was. And it had now who was the director of it? It wasn't Miike. Yeah, it was Miike. Takeshi Miike was the director of the first One Missed Call. So, it's not a series that I enjoy. Dark Water is the other J-horror movie that also got an American remake with Jennifer Connelly in it. Dark Water, the original Japanese one, it's a great film as well. It's actually, if you were to say, I want to get into Japanese horror movies, what are the top 5 Japanese horrors you'd watch? I would say The Ring and The Grudge, and I would give you Dark Water as well. I'd probably also give you One Cut of the Dead, because I'd say that's great. And then I would recommend Tokyo Gore Police, because I think if you're going to get into Japanese horror, you should get into the splatter genre as well, because the splatter genre is where the money's at when it comes to the fun. Everyone's going to say, watch Pulse, watch what's his name? Cairo? No, Cairo is Pulse. What's that other one? The document Noroi, The Curse. Nah, they're bland. They're average. Don't have to watch those ones. Watch the ones I suggested. Much better. I like Ray. Twin Peaks, RoboCop, Jurassic City. I'm disappointed with the number 1 movie on this list. I don't know what I would have at number 1. Let's quickly scroll down the list. Maybe Cabin Fever. Oh, maybe Flatliners. Yeah, I'm not sure what I would put as number 1, as the absolute worst horror movie I've ever seen. Because the issue is, if you're talking about the absolute worst horror movies I've ever seen, then it wouldn't be an American or a British film. And that's the other issue I have with this list. It's American only. And there are, like, everyone makes horror movies. Indonesia, Japan, the UK. The UK, you make a lot of shit horror films. Turkey, Thailand, Australia. So this list is very one country central. And so thus, when we're talking about absolute worst horror movies, it's really hard to go past a lot of the shit that comes from ITN and those British guys. Do you know what else I saw the other day that said it was a bad horror film? Muck. Have you heard of, or do you know Muck? It is a Kickstarter film from, I want to say 2012, 2013, 2014, which is supposed to be like a parody and homage to 80s and 90s horror. So a lot of silly kills, a lot of scary monsters, and a lot of boobs. For some reason, Muck comes up a lot as bad horror films. I don't agree with that. I thought Muck was fun. But anyway, I've been the Artie Dans, and you are watching Shockmania here on Rumble and on YouTube. Thank you for joining in, Lyle. As always, it has been fabulous to have you on board. This time for the whole trip. You'd have Prom Night Remake, because the only good thing about it was the cover of Time of the Seasons. Idris Ibla couldn't save it. And you know what? If he can't save your film, then it is a bad film to start with. That just goes without saying. That guy could save a lot of crap films, but he could not save Prom Night. So I'm the Artie Dans. You are watching Shockmania. Thank you so much for tuning in for almost an hour to hear me talk crap and to enjoy this list of so-called 49 of the worst rated movies on Rotten Tomatoes. 49 because I didn't put the 50th film in there. And I don't know if I completely agree that One Missed Call is the worst. Lyle says it should be Prom Night. But what do you think? What do you think, you out there watching it as well? What do you think is the utter worst horror movie ever from anywhere around the world? Like, I'm thinking, like, I've seen a lot of Chinese shit that's really shit. Like, really, really, really bad. And then there's a lot of like Z-grade Japanese stuff, which is horrible as well. So that's why this list just comes off as just a bit in bad taste when it comes to the types of movies it's on there, because it's just all American. Anyway, I'm the Artie Dandy. You are watching Shockmania. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have loved having you on board, and I will catch you the next time. The next time we go live, we're going to look at a whole bunch of trailers that Lyle has given me to have a look at, and it is going to be fun because there are some absolute doozies in that list. I'm going to sign off. I'm going to go watch the footy and then maybe have a nap before I have pizza tonight. So you guys have fun. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time. See you later. And cue the uncomfortable pause as the stream ends.